amazing word and all that. Next, we're going to ask Ms. Deborah Sosane to come forward to introduce our next speaker.
I would like to say to Sister Chen, I had to sing that song because I need that song. I'm feeling that prayer number 1, 2, and 3. I can do all that. Okay. I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Monique Dixon. Ms. Dixon is a board-certified family nurse practitioner who has been practicing for the past 10 years in family medicine and urgent care. Monique attended L.B. Landry Senior High School in New Orleans, Louisiana, and the University of the State of New York, where she obtained her associate degree in nursing. She also attended Dillard University, where she obtained a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and Loyola University with a master's degree in nursing. After graduating from Dillard University, where she still served her country in the U.S. Army, she became a certified registered nurse. As a practicing nurse practitioner, she acquired a plethora of skills while working in ICU, PCU, surgery, and rehab. She is the wife of Royal Dixon III, the mother of 3 children, Miles, Maya, and Ross. She is currently practicing in her office, the Dixon Family Medical Center, which is located at 536 St. Landry Veterans Memorial Highway, Washington, Louisiana. Before I present her to you, I would like to say something on a personal level, she's my neighbor, my friend. Also, I watched her juggling from going to school, also having a family, and then watch God elevate her to where she is right now. Amen. Sometimes when God starts elevating us, we forget where we come from. Yes. But I can truly say, I have knocked on her door. Myself and my husband, we both have elderly parents. And a lot of times you leave from the doctor's office, you're not sure what they're saying. Amen. About the procedures. Yes. There's never a time I knocked on the door and asked him and said, Dr. Dixon, I've got some concerns, I'm not sure, should we do this procedure or not? She'd break it down to me, tell me what to do. And I just want to say that I love you, and I thank God for you, and I thank God for elevating you in the community. Amen. Monique Dixon, and to others, Dr. Dixon. Amen.
Familiar faces in here. I just would like to give thanks and honor for Deborah for thinking about me when you guys had this women's conference, and as well as the congregation and the pastors here at this church. And also thank you guys for allowing me to speak here at this women's conference. This is one of my passions. As a matter of fact, health has always been my passion, but when we're talking about Black African American women, well, let's not say Black, let's say African American women, that's one of my passions. I love teaching, as well as I love taking care of people, and I like medicine and all those things. So when you mix it all together, teaching African American women and ministering to them, because this is actually my ministry. And not only do I care for people, my main concern is to teach people. Because if you don't teach them, the biggest thing is to be aware. And in order for you to be aware, somebody needs to teach you the things that you need to know in order to be aware. So, we talk about knowledge being power. When Deborah called me and she came to my office, she says, Monique, I have this conference, so you want to speak? I want to say it was maybe a couple of days ago. She waited at the last minute. I didn't want to say that, but that's what she did. And so I said, okay, well, what do you want me to speak about? She said, anything you want to speak about. I said, you want me to do high blood pressure, diabetes? She says, anyone you want to do. So, of course, I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. I said, can I just do all of them? She said, well, we don't have that much time. So I said, maybe I'll come up with a topic where I could include some of every one of them. And so I thought about that and what impacts African American women the most. And so I started thinking about that and I said, you know what it is? It's heart disease. And we're talking about, I love Sister Cheney was talking about fear. You know, fear is embedded into our hearts, right? And so I said, let's couple this all together. It's ironic that she talked about fear. Well, let's talk about our heart, okay? And this is something that we shouldn't fear and something that we should tackle. Because as African American women, 1 in 3 of us die from heart disease or heart-related diseases. And there's several of them, and that's why I chose this topic, because we'll talk about, you know, a few of them. So let's start off talking about what is heart disease. So heart disease, especially in African American women, it consists of several different things. You have coronary artery disease, and that's when your arteries are clogged from too much cholesterol or too much fat. Then you also have, heart attacks. Heart attacks is because of the clogged arteries in your heart that causes that. Then we talk about diabetes. Diabetes is one of the precursors to heart disease, or can be. Talk about hypertension. Hypertension is a precursor. I mean, all of this stuff is all woven in together. So if we understand these things, some of these things are preventable. And how can we prevent them? So we'll talk about a few of those things. And I have an outline, because without an outline, I will go off and I'll start talking about all kinds of things. Okay, so what I plan on covering today is what is heart disease, why is it important, what have we learned thus far, because there's a lot of research that's going into heart disease and trying to help us, because as a matter of fact, half of our African American women will be affected in some way by heart disease. And some of these risk factors are preventable, and heart disease is mostly genetic, but there is some things that we can do to kind of help prevent it and reduce our risk from having heart disease. So then we'll talk about what is a heart attack, are you at risk, how can I prevent it, and then, you know, we'll get into maybe asking some questions, and I'll start answering some questions, because I'm sure we've all heard of heart disease, so it's not like I'm teaching anything different. But what I want to do is just disseminate the information and be available to answer questions, or if anybody have any concerns, maybe someone in your family. And chances are, every African American lady that's in here has a family member, especially an African American woman, who's affected by heart disease, who have heart disease, or who has died from heart disease or heart disease related complications. Okay, so that should make for a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad to answer any questions. So, heart disease, like I said, we talked about coronary heart disease. We talked about high blood pressure. Another condition I didn't talk about was heart failure. There's also a thing called rheumatic fever, or heart disease. And then there's also diseases of the pulmonary circulatory system. And then we'll get into that a little bit later and some of what that is. So why is it important, all this heart disease stuff? So the fact about heart disease in women. Cardiovascular disease causes almost 500,000 deaths per year. 1 in 3 women die from cardiovascular disease. About 64% of the women who die suddenly from coronary heart disease have no previous symptoms. none whatsoever. So, and I kind of question that. I think that, okay, if these ladies die suddenly, and they say that they never had any symptoms, that's kind of strange. It may be true, but what happens sometimes is that we're afraid, like we talked about fear. You may have something, maybe a little burning in your chest, but like maybe it's that tomato sauce I ate last night or whatever, and I don't know, I just got gas or something. Or either it could be your back hurting or whatever, maybe I pulled something. Or you may have maybe a pain in your neck or in your jaw, oh, I must have slept wrong. So some of these warning signs or signs. Now I don't want everybody to run out here and go, oh, my neck. So that's paranoia. That also comes from a fear. So there's a healthy fear and a not so healthy fear. You don't want to go overboard. Everything has to be in balance. Okay. So, like I said, so it can be, they say there's no symptoms, but I think our body talks to us. God allows our body to talk to us and to teach us what these signs are. And the thing is for us to know what these signs are, so we won't have to be afraid. And then we'll need to know when and when not to act. Because a lot of times because we're afraid, we'll like push it underneath the rug and we just won't deal with it. Because we're afraid of finding out what it is. But I'd rather us know ahead of time and not be afraid. We'll tackle it in the beginning, fix whatever it is and try to eliminate it. Know what's going on. Don't be afraid to know. A lot of people say, well, if I don't know, then that's all the better. Okay, so some of these recordings about women not having any signs or symptoms, I think they may have had the signs and symptoms, but were too afraid to report them or too afraid to deal with them head on. Okay? So then the next thing we'll talk about is, like I said, how the disease is largely preventable. So heart disease can strike women of any age. I've seen women as young as in their 20s who've had heart attacks. As a matter of fact, recently I had a patient of mine, and she's not black, she's a Caucasian lady, and I want to say she's maybe in her 30s, looks like the picture of health. Okay? She exercises, she eats right, she's not overweight. And when I looked at her, she's like, yeah, I just had a heart attack like 2 months ago, and I was like looking at her like, even though I know it's possible, it's still amazing when you see it, how many people it affects. And I mean, it's amazing to me. And what can she have done differently? And I'm sure, she probably didn't pay attention to things in the beginning, and at a young age, a lot of times young people are like, oh, I'm probably not going to have that now, or whatever. So as young people that eat anything they want, and they're active. Usually younger people are really active. Well, I don't know about now because they always have the video games, but when we were coming up, they were real active. We stayed outside, and our parents had to actually, threaten us. You need to come inside. And I'm from the city, so we played and played and played. There was such a thing as a street light. And my mom said, when that street light comes on, you gotta be inside. And the only time we wanted to come inside is to get water. And our parents made sure we stayed outside. You better stay outside, we won't run it in and out. I mean, we were physically active. So now all of that physical activity that we had as when I was coming up, now I'm not gonna say my age, and in the city, almost 50. We were active. We didn't have any video games. If we wanted to play video games back in the day, you had to go down to a place that had this huge box, and you had to stick a quarter in there, and you could play just for a few minutes. Now, if your parents gave you a lot of quarters, you could stay down there maybe 30 minutes, because your quarters didn't last long. And then after that, it was all over. And I think we need to go back to those quarter days and get these kids out of that living room. Because what we're doing is we're setting up a generation of children, men and women, that will be, they're sedentary. They can't go outside because it's too hot. They can't go outside because the mosquitoes are out there. They can't go outside because it's this. They can't go outside because it's that. Their friends on the phone, they got to finish the match and Fortnite this and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So now we're talking about, we were very, very active. Now we have a generation of people that are not going to be active. The only way they're active is if they're participating in some type of sport. But what about all those kids kids that are obsessed with playing video games. If we're having problems with heart disease right now, and it's 1 in 3 of our African American women, and the stats are pretty much the same for men, but we're talking about women right now. If the stats are that high for us now at this point, and we were very active, imagine what the stats will be for those kids that are coming up right now. So that's why we're talking about preventing these things. So the best thing we can do is prevent them from happening. So then there's factors that lead to heart disease, and they originate in young women, just like I said. So some of these things with heart disease, we can see them as early as their teens now, because we're having more prevalent obesity in young adults. We have a lot of young adults with diabetes at this young age, and the diabetes that we're seeing with them is diabetes that usually occurs with people that are in their 50s. But now it's down into their teens and 20s. And the reason I say that is because we have to be vigilant at this. There's a lot of research that has been done that talks about what leads to heart disease and when does it happen. So there's such a thing called this metabolic syndrome. And I'm not sure if any of you guys heard of this. When you talk about metabolic, you're talking about metabolism. So all this heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, things that lead to it, comes from the way we metabolize things. So when you talk about this metabolic syndrome, we're talking about our inability to metabolize. There's only 3 types of foods that we eat. Well, not foods, or 3 things that we eat. We eat carbohydrates, which is sugars, it's broken down into sugar. We eat fat, which is fat. And we eat protein, which is meats, and some beans or whatever that's considered protein. But for the most part, it's carbohydrates, fats, and protein. So when you're talking about, like I said, metabolism or metabolic syndrome, we metabolize protein, but we can't make protein per se. We have to eat that. But our bodies make carbohydrates and it makes fat. That's what's made during the night while we sleep. So in the daytime, when we're awake, we have to rely on our energy sources from carbohydrates, which is what we eat. So if you're not eating fat and you're not eating meat, you're eating carbohydrates, which is sugar. Carbohydrates are necessary because that's what we use for energy. But what happens with us is that we eat too many carbs. Well, everything is carb, especially if you're not paying attention. But it's important because we need this for energy. But when we overdo the carbs, then we put our body in excess work. It's working overtime, trying to metabolize the carbohydrate. And when you've done so much, it's like overwork, anything gets tired. And so what happens is our pancreas have to help with breaking down the sugars, and we keep making it work over and over and over. We wear out our pancreas, and then it stops wanting to help us. But now they have meds and everything that helps. These meds pretty much are kicking your pancreas and making it do what it's supposed to do, and you're making it work overtime. And it's telling you, I'm tired. Can you just back off with the carbs, and you just keep doing it until the pancreas says, listen, you're on your own now. I've been doing all that. Okay? We didn't try with the medicine. You're kicking me when I'm down. I'm not doing it anymore. So that's when you get to the doctor and he's like, doctor, he's like, I don't know, your sugar's so high, and you said that, I don't know why it's so high. And I checked it in the morning, and I haven't even eaten anything, and it's still high. Well, the reason that is, just like I said, at night, when you're in a fasting state, your body continues to make sugar, and it makes fat. The reason it does that is because we cannot go without energy, right? And so in the daytime, of course, you're eating sugar, but at night, what's going to give you the energy at night while you're sleeping? Well, your body's going to use the sugar that's already been stored inside of your body, and it's also going to make fats at night to help you have energy during the night while you sleep. You didn't know that, huh? So when you wake up in the morning and you check your sugar, man, it's 200 and I didn't even eat anything. That's why. Okay, so we talked about the inability to metabolize. So get back on track. So we talked about metabolizing. And like I said, we see this at an early age. So you'll see a young lady who's a little on the heavy side, and that can be anybody. Not only, we see them as now in younger children, as young as 10 years old, up to 20s or whatever. So if you see and I don't want you guys going around trying to diagnose people, by all means. But I just want you to be mindful of this. If you see a young lady and she's a little on the heavy side, okay, a lot of times I tell people this, and my little kids are going, my children, I have my youngest son, I can remember maybe he was like 10 years old, and he was going around saying the word, and I use all these big words, and he said, oh, I use all these big words. I said, I just say the first word that comes to my mind. So it actually has rubbed off on my children. There's this thing called acanthosis nigricans. So at 10 years old, I got a little son saying, Mama, they got acanthosis. I said, well, what that means is it's a black, leathery appearance behind the neck. Usually you see that in people who have a precursor to becoming diabetic. Okay, so you'll see a lot of little children walking around that are a little overweight, and they'll have that appearance on their neck. Not only do they have that, they also have their blood pressure is a little bit higher than it should be, which is also a precursor. If you check their waistline, it's a little bit bigger than it's supposed to be. And also they probably have the cholesterol, probably a little bit higher than it's supposed to be. Those are the precursors. Now, if we could see that in somebody as young as 10, that means that we could do a lot to impact that 10-year-old's life to prevent them from having the problems that comes from metabolic syndrome. Well, they call it metabolic, but you also hear sometimes it's called dysmetabolic. Dysmetabolic means that you have trouble metabolizing sugars and fat. And if you can't metabolize them correctly, then those things topple up inside of you. Okay? So you got higher sugar, higher fat. Those things lead to heart disease. But there are risk factors that we could actually help control. Some of it is genetics, and some of it isn't. Okay? So not just because you're overweight, that means that you have metabolic syndrome. There's some younger people that have metabolic syndrome. And you ever seen anybody, man, she's skinny, but she has high blood pressure. Or she's so skinny, I don't know why she has diabetes. Because that's in their genes, and you can't change that. But you can minimize it, you know. Even if you're small, just because you're small doesn't mean that you don't need to exercise. We all exercise because it makes our body a better functioning machine, okay? So that's all a part of lifestyle changes. So some of the symptoms that we'll talk about of a heart attack. So that means knowing the warning signs. So some of the warning signs are having some chest discomfort, like I just mentioned about maybe, you know, you think because you've eaten something that may have a burning in your chest, or you may get a little stickiness in your chest, or a little ache here, or a little, so you'll say, maybe I pulled a muscle. And what we do is we start rationalizing in our head what it can be, instead of going trying to figure out what it is, okay? So you'll say, oh, I felt something sticking in my chest, or I have a little pain, but the heart's supposed to be on this side, so you think maybe this is my heart, or, you know, my jaw hurts, probably my tooth, and, you know, different things like that. So if you're getting those kind of signs or whatever, it's best to have them checked out, you know, to a healthy degree. You don't have to come every time something bothers you and think it's your heart. And I don't want to scare anybody. I just want you guys to have your annually checked up or whatever. And your doctors will know, you know, what your risk factors are, because not only is it just these signs and symptoms, there's ways that they can look at lab work and do different physical examinations or whatever to determine whether or not you're at risk for heart disease, which most of us are, but some risks are higher than others. Okay? And then it also makes a difference whether or not your family, parents, you know, siblings, grandparents, all of them, if they were had any issues with heart disease or anything like that, then we look at you more closely because you may be at a greater disposition to having heart disease. So some of it is chest discomfort. You could have discomfort in your upper body, like your arms or what have you, shortness of breath, breaking out into a cold sweat, having some nausea, and lightheadedness. So some of those things are real good, real strong indicators of maybe heart attack or what have you. But one of the things that I want to impart on you guys is that some of these symptoms like the chest discomfort and those kind of things, what's tricky about this whole thing is that African American women don't have typical signs. So you may not have a crushing chest pain, you may just have a pain in your back that's been nagging you for a while. You're like, I don't know what happened, I didn't do anything to my back or what have you. So a lot of times it could just need to be, like I said, a jaw pain that caused you, or maybe a pain in your neck. I mean, it could be tingling on one side. So one thing about us is that we really need to take care of ourselves because the signs and symptoms are even tricky for us. Okay? So then we talk about, are you at risk? So some of the uncontrollable risk factors are increasing in age. Like I said, it's usually when you're older, you're at more of a greater risk for having heart disease or heart attack. We talked about heredity, talking about whether or not it's your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, all those things. So a lot of times when we were coming up, your parents never really told you what was wrong with them or what have you. They were real secretive about that. So just make sure that if you have kids or nieces or nephews or whatever, talk about the health issues that we have. And a lot of times we were embarrassed to say or just private. You don't want anybody to know what's going on with you. Well, I would like to teach my children what's going on with me so that they can know how to impart that information to their healthcare providers. So the healthcare providers will look after them and make sure that they're not going to develop whatever it is, or to teach them how to prevent getting whatever it is if it's preventable. Okay? So then the next thing is race. Like I said, as African American women, we can't change that. You can't change your race, we can't change your genes, and you can't change your age. If we could, we all would. So some of the things that are controllable is we can control our cholesterol, but not eating as much fat-containing foods. And we just talked about this. There's only 3 things that we eat. There's proteins, fat, and carbohydrates. So we decrease the amount of fat that we're ingesting, and we decrease the amount of fat that clogs up our arteries, that leads to heart disease. Then the next thing is our blood pressure. If we control our blood pressure, either you can control it by maybe exercising and doing those things. Sometimes exercise can bring your blood pressure down at least 20 points. So if you're like at a 140, 150, 160, even 160, you can bring your blood pressure down to a 140. And then the 140s over 90s is now acceptable. It used to be 120s over 80s, but they found that having or shooting for blood pressure that low is sometimes not safe, especially for older people, because it causes them to become weak and dizzy and falling out or whatever. So the range now is 140 over 90. If any of you guys didn't know the recent change, we change something every year. So that's why it's good for us to stay informed, okay? So then physical inactivity, what I talked about earlier, that's one of the things you can change. And we're not saying go out there and prepare for a marathon or anything like that. Usually what I tell my patients is just try to exercise. And exercise maybe just walking, a light walk. You start out slow and just try to move as fast as you can, because you know you're trying to hurry and get it over with. So if you just move your pace up a little bit more, and maybe do that maybe 3 to 5 days a week, that helps a lot. It helps with your blood pressure, it helps with your blood sugar, it helps with you sleeping well, it helps your bowels move well, it helps with your brain functioning. I mean, just exercising and getting things moving helps a lot. And the way I usually explain to my patients is like you're a machine. Your body is a well-oiled machine. And you want it to function as best as it can. So if you're exercising and getting your engine moving, when the car, it's like having a car. You have a car that's just sitting outside and you just let it sit and sit and sit. When you get ready to go and get that thing started, you barely want to start. But if you keep it moving all the time, the minute you crank it up, it's ready to go. Okay, so your body's just like that. So you want to make sure that it's moving constantly, okay? So I use a lot of analogies to help my patients understand, so y'all don't mind me with the analogy. Another analogy I use for my patients is this. They talk about, well, I keep gaining weight, I don't know what I need to do to lose weight. So there's this thing called, like, I know you guys are catching your attention now. Okay, so I battle with the same issues now, you guys. So I'm not, just because I do this doesn't mean that I don't battle with the same issues. In my ways, I mean, I got all the symptoms, but, you know, and I talk to people about what they need to do. And sometimes I need to do a little bit more of what I'm telling people to. But look, I know, and I'm going to try to help you guys, and we can help each other. So I tell my patients this. A lot of times they say, well, what I need to do, can you give me some pills to help me lose some weight? Well, pills are not the answer. Okay, the pills that they have on the market now, what they do is, a lot of times you'll find people who don't prescribe those type of medications, because what we found, especially in African American women, is that those pills cause pulmonary hypertension. And when they're causing an increased pressure inside of your lungs, the only way you can improve that, you can take medicine for it, but the chances are you'll need a new lung. You can't live without lungs. And also, one of the drawbacks of having that quick pill that causes you to lose weight, what it does is it decreases your metabolism. It makes you not hungry, and by losing weight like that. So I already told you that we need carbohydrates for energy. So first of all, you deprive yourself of carbohydrates and energy. And then when you deprive yourself of carbohydrates and energy, then your body starts to break down the fat, and the fat is being used for energy. So you disrupted the entire system in which our bodies are supposed to work, right? So whenever you stop taking that pill that already caused increased pressure inside your lungs, it already caused you to starve because you don't have the carbohydrates that you need, and it already caused the breakdown of the fat that you need. And if you're not careful, sometimes it'll break down the proteins that are in your body. That's the ones that are real thin. And the minute you stop taking the pill, you gain everything that you lost. Wait a minute, I'm not finished. If you lost 50 pounds, you're going to gain the 50 pounds that you lost, plus 50 more pounds. And the reason that happens is because your body says, listen, I've been working for you every single day in and day out, day in and day out. And all I ask is that you give me the carbohydrates that I need. That's my pay. I'm working for you, I need my pay. Okay? So I've been doing this for months now, and you have not fed me. So what I'm going to do is whenever you give me something now, you owe it to me, so I'm going to hold on to it. And you know what? Everything else you give me after that, I want that too, because you just started starving. And that's why it's what you took for me, and then I'm going to take some extra. So don't try those pills. They're not good at all. It's like, I think it's the devil in the bottle. When you gain weight, when you're trying to lose weight, you can gain it all back plus some. So I would never take the easy route. But we'll talk more about that later. So then we talked about, like I said, obesity and being overweight. That's a risk factor that we can change. Also, type 2 diabetes, that's a risk factor that we could change because we can actually prevent diabetes to some extent. And that's by minimizing the number of sugars and concentrated sweets and so forth that we use, as well as smoking. We can control that risk factors. So we talked about cholesterol, and I talked about your body making fat during the night. So cholesterol is no more than fat. And we have to eat fat. So even if we're eating protein, a piece of meat, a piece of chicken, or what have you, which is protein, there's fat attached to it. So we want to watch how much fat we're eating. Because if you eat too much fat, I usually say that, I talk to my patients about when you're eating cholesterol or you're eating fat, fried chicken, whatever, the things that we like here, crackling, and those kind of things. When you eat any of those things, chances are there's some fat involved in it. And the fat is similar to all of us that fried fish, fried chicken, or ever before. Our grandparents used to take that oil and they would put it in a little can or something on the stove or store it. I don't know, some of us probably don't do that anymore, but that's what the grandparents used to do. Well, my grandmother, I know, I don't know about anybody else. And then they would save it and put it on the side. And there's a reason for doing that. Not just to use it over and over. They didn't want to take that grease and pour that inside of a drain. Right? Because if you do that, what happens? Okay, well that same clogging that we talked about is the same clogging that happens to us when we pour grease down our drain. So it depends on how you're going to pour it. You're going to pour a lot or a little bit. It doesn't matter which way you do it. That means that it's still going to get clogged up. It's either going to be faster or slower. Okay? So, that same clog, and if you think about that, when I'm eating this fried chicken, I'm clogging up something. I don't know how much I'm clogging. Now, some people said this, when you put the grease down in the drain, if you run cold water, it gets clogged faster. You chase it with hot water, melt it all over, right? Doesn't it? If you put it in the drain. Well, you know what that means? Every time we go down to the crackling biscuit that we have here in Colbert, and you eat the crackling and the boudin and all that, you have to chase that with a pot of boiling water. Can you do that? It's not possible. It's not possible. So don't even try it. I guess you guys are saying, oh, I got a solution. And instead of a hot water, you say, well, I'm drinking me a hot cup of water and that'll make me hot. You can try it. There's been no proven scientific reason. That's just me saying. That's just me saying. Don't follow that. That does not eat so much fat, you guys, because there's no way that you can do that. And this is what I say, when your drain gets clogged, if it was whether at your house or what have you, even if it's inside your own body, you have to get one of these things. If it's a plumbing issue at your house, what do? You call a plumber, right? When they come to your house, what do they come with? Now, you've already tried Drano. When you try the Drano, and you won't get the sponge and try to do everything that you can. But if it's a clog that cannot be unclogged, what do? You get the plumber. When he comes to your house, what does he have? The snake, okay? You know what that snake does? It gets in there and it blocks up or it unclogs or, I don't know, maybe it's a high snake. It gets rid of all that stuff. Well, guess what? We don't have a snake that we can put inside of us, right? So you know what you have to end up doing? You have to pay this person who went to school and had all of his training, right? His training costs a lot of money, right? He's going to charge him a lot of money to give you some of his training or his experience that he's got. It's going to probably cost you anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000. That's an expensive plumber. You know what he's going to do? He's going to stick something inside your veins, the drains. He's going to go in there with a snake, a little bit of a small snake, and he's going to do the same thing that the plumber does inside of you. That's when they call, oh, I need to have that angioplasty. Oh, I have to have a double bypass or a triple bypass. That's expensive. I don't want no plumber coming to my house. Most times I try to do it myself. I get a hand, and I be trying to see if I can do it myself. Because it's expensive. I don't even know how much it costs for a plumber because I've never tried to call him over to my house. How much it costs for a plumber if he comes out? How much?
75.
Anybody know? I have to get out of myself. I try. So the same principle I use with that's the same principle I want to try to do to keep that cardiologist away from my heart. I want to make sure that I can get the clogs out myself. So the way I get my clogs out is I exercise. I try not to put no grease down my drain. I make sure it ain't clogged up with nothing. No people don't put nothing down that drain that's going to clog it up. Okay? And that's the biggest thing like I say. I mean, that's life-saving. Who wants to spend that kind of money? Now, I've already said that. That's the part that we can do. The genetics part, we can't change that. If our parents have high cholesterol, diabetes, we already got risk for that. But the things that I can't do, if I go, you go to some place and they say, do not pour this in there, do not put this in the color, don't like this, don't this. I'm not going to do that. Because I don't want to have to spend money for the plumber to come. And I don't want the cardiologist to come either. So I want to do what I can do. I'm going to do my part. So then, let's see, we talked about that. We talked about blood pressure. And I was telling you guys about the machine, the well-oiled machine. We talked about cholesterol. We talked about sugar, blood pressure. A lot of times we have issues with blood pressure in the African American community. Usually our blood pressures tend to run high. And a lot of times we're like, well, why African African Americans have such a prevalence of high blood pressure? This is my theory. When we were taken, our ancestors, not us, our ancestors were taken from Africa. And we came on this, the mothership is what they call it. There was a bunch of us packed inside of there. So our ability to survive was based on us staying hydrated. So we held on to fluid. And when you have increased fluid, you have increased pressure, right? So we held on to that, and I don't know if that's something that our bodies adapted to because of our ancestors adapting to that. But for whatever reason, our pressure tends to be a little bit higher. We hold on to fluid a little bit longer. And that's why we always need diuretics to help get rid of excess fluid. So we hold on to fluid, so we have a little higher pressure than usual, just genetically. Okay? So what we try to do is make our bodies move faster and to try to increase our circulation to kind of help get rid of some of this excess fluid. And like I said, it lowers our blood pressure. Okay? So that's my theory. I think that's why we have so much fluid on board. And we have more salt content in our body that draws more fluid to us. So we have a tendency to harbor more fluids than usual. And that was our ability to survive as we went through from Africa to the United States. That's my theory. So we talked about there's 39 million women who are aged 20 and older who have high blood pressure. 39 million. And we're talking about black women. That's a lot of people. And a risk, one of the risks that we talked about was physical inactivity. So exercising, like I said, just exercising 3 to 5 days a week decreases your blood pressure by 20 points. And that's a lot. 20 point drops is a lot. We talked about the excess weight. We talked about exercise and watching what we're eating. 30 minutes, I say 15, 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week. That's something that we could easily do. And if we don't do that, it leads to high blood pressure, it leads to diabetes, it leads to heart disease. So when you're exercising, don't think about it like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to lose weight. That's not what you're trying to do. Like I said, because everybody don't need to lose weight. The thing is, you want your body to function as a well-oiled machine. Okay? You don't want it to be one of those sedentary cars that are sitting outside in the driveway and takes an act of Congress to get it to move. Because once you're sitting down, you don't want to move. You got to convince yourself, let me get up, let me get up. Oh, I got to get up, I got to get up. But if you just be in a routine of trying to get that done, don't think about it like, oh, I don't want to do it. You should say, I want to do it because I don't want my brain clogged. I want to do it because I don't want to have heart disease. I want to do it because I don't want to have a heart attack. I want to do it because I don't want to be on dialysis. I want to do it because I don't want to have to pay $15,000. I want to do it. Then we talk about diabetes in African Americans. There's 7.5 million women ages 20 and older who have diabetes of some type, either type 1 or type 2. And there was this question about what's the difference between type 1 and type 2. Type 1 means that your body don't make insulin at all, so you have to have insulin. And usually you see that in a child, usually childhood diabetes. These little kids, they may have started off with a little bit of pancreas activity, making a little bit of insulin, and it dies down before they're even maybe by the age of 10, like usually in their very young ages. But they never make insulin, so they require insulin all the time. But type 2 is when your body does make insulin. The problem is it's just not making enough to meet your sugar intake. Okay. So another thing too is smoking. Smoking, if you just try to quit smoking, within 1 or 2 years of quitting, you decrease your coronary risk of heart disease substantially. I don't know the exact percentage, but it just depends on how long you've been smoking, how much you smoke. But no matter what, if you quit, you decrease your risk drastically. Also with smoking, a lot of times people who smoke say, oh, I can smell and I can taste good, whatever. I don't see how all you can smell is smoke. And when whatever you smell is what you taste. So you taste the smoke and you smell and smoke. How can you? So if you stop smoking, your sense of smell and your sense of taste comes back. That's one thing. You can breathe easier. You won't cough all day long and all night long. It's easier for you to be more physically active because you're not short of breath. And it frees up the need for a cigarette and it saves you a ton of money. Cigarettes are $7, I think, a pack. I can't even afford to smoke. 7 times 30, what is that? $210 a month. And some people smoke more than one pack. $200, that's almost a dollar or a light bill or something. That's a month. That's a lot of money. It may not seem like a lot, but if somebody gave me $200 extra every month, at the end of the year, I got almost $3,000. And guess what I did with the $3,000? Burned it all. If I was smoking, you just gonna take your money, put it in a basket, and set it apart. I would cry if I saw somebody burn $3,000. I would do everything I can to try to get that money before the fire get on. It's true. And what's happening is instead of smoking one, you probably start, oh, I only smoke a half pack. Oh, that's still $3. That's a lot of money to burn. I would even want to see a dollar bill burning on the floor. But we have people every day burning up the paper and leaves. Paper and leaves, that's all it is. And they pay big money for paper and leaves. So now, we talked about ways, let's see what we can do to prevent it, you guys. So we start with eating a healthy diet. A diet that's low in saturated fats, trans fats, cholesterol, sodium, all of those things. We want to try to reduce what we're eating as far as fat content. Try to eat as healthy as you can. I mean, it's hard, it's a struggle for all of us. But just try to do your part. And even you can just say, okay, instead of when I go to Popeyes, well, no, Popeyes has nothing healthy. Wait, don't laugh, I'm serious. Listen, you guys listen very well. I went to Popeyes one day, and me and a group of my co-workers, we were on this, I'm not going to say health care. We had all decided that we would eat healthy. I said, okay, so they all told me what they wanted. Somebody said they wanted some grilled chicken, see if they could get the, what they said, the skinless naked chicken. Okay, so Popeyes only have naked chicken every once in a while. It's not something that's on the menu all the time. So me, unbeknownst to me, I guess the person in the drive-thru was like, who is this? Anyway, I came through and I said, I'd like to get some grilled chicken. Do you have the naked chicken? She said, no, we don't have the naked chicken. I said, do you have anything that's not fried? No, everything is fried. So I couldn't be mad at the lady. I said, stupid me asking them if they have anything else. So I said, okay, I'm sorry. So I just drove out. I said, well, just give me the fried, whatever. So one thing that somebody told to me that makes sense, and they said, if you've got high blood pressure and you've got diabetes, never go to a place where you have to order the food, pay them the money, and wait for them to bring you the food.
That's right.
You know why? I never want to eat anything that I have to pay for first. If you go to a fine restaurant or whatever, like say you go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, where they give you just a piece of meat, and they give you a few vegetables, right, on the side. Just a few vegetables. You'll probably pay about maybe $50 a person for the piece of meat, and I don't know how much the size, maybe $10. So one person will probably pay about $60 for some food. They're going to bring you the food first. You're going to eat it all and everything. You're going to eat your vegetables, everything. And then they're going to come and give you a ticket after you finish. Now, chances are that food may be healthy for you. Chances are it's better. But if you got to go to a place and you tell them, I want number 2, and I want a little fine that food's not good.
Cook too fast.
It may taste good, but it's not good for you. So never, remember this every time you guys go somewhere. Never eat food that you have to order, pay for, and wait for them to give it to you. But when you wait in the line and you think about that, like she said, never buy food that I have to order and pay for, and wait for them to bring it to me. Every time you sit in the line somewhere, and you have to do that, I want you to think about me. She says, never order any food that I have to pay for and go sit down and wait for them to bring it to me. It's going to come in a brown bag. Now some of them try to be fancy, they put in a white paper bag or a white plastic bag. Either way it goes, if you got to pay for it first before you can eat it, you don't want it. Well, how about one of my little smart sons says, well, when you go to the grocery store and you're buying fruits and vegetables, you got to pay for that first. I said, I'm talking about ready-made food. Ready-made food. If you got to order it and pay for it and go sit down, or they tell you drive up over there to the front, we're going to walk it out to you. Don't eat that. It's not good. And you guys are laughing because you know it's the truth, right? Do not, and I'm going to say it again, do not eat any food that you have to order first. Pay for it. And guess what? When you pay for it, it's cheap. You can get 2 of them for $4. You can get a special, you can get the chicken and the biscuit and the french fries for $2.99. I mean, that's a good deal, isn't it? Good deal, huh? Let me tell you the trick to that. You remember I told you guys about the $15,000 that you have to pay for this plumber to come inside of you? You're not paying for it on the front end. They're going to get it on the back end. Okay? So the cheap deal, that's $2.99, 2 for $4. And guess what? They have it illuminated with the big signs. They have it coming to you in the what you call it, the advertising section. You can get 4 Big Macs for 29 cents. You can get a 2-piece special, 99 cents. You buy a 2-piece for 99 cents, you get a 2-piece special free. Well, you're not giving me anything, and I want that. And most people are like, ooh, that's cheap. And we could all go down there and we could all eat for $10. But we can all put the oil down our drain. You could order it and pay cheap for it. Real fast, and then they're going to walk out to you. I don't want it. You're going to have to get into practice with that, but that's not easy. I don't want it. Y'all say with me and repeat after me. I don't want it. Now, listen, I got people saying, listen, let me tell you about that. I have somebody in this audience today, and I'm not going to say who it is. They said they're going to take the special, but they're going to ask for a cup of hot water and go there. Listen to me, I want y'all to say it with me. I don't want it. And say, you have to say that at least 1,000 times to convince yourself, I don't want it. And I can get to the line and say, I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. And what you said is, I don't want no cheap food. I don't want no plumber at my house. And I don't want heart disease. She said, I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't care if it's 99 cents. I don't want it. I don't want it. And neither should you. Now, at this time, since you guys don't want it, I'll answer any question you want. I want to hear the question.
What about the buffet?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you question.
They don't have to think of the buffet.
At the buffet where?
Oh, golden around.
goes to the buffet at the Golden Corral. And all she eats, she pays $20, and all she eats is grapes, cantaloupe. Is that what you're saying, Deborah? I don't want it. What else, Deborah?
I'm gonna eat that and I'm gonna go to the gym the next day.
I don't want it. Well, guess what? You gotta pay for it first. You gotta pay for it first, and you do wait, because you wait in the line behind all the other people who say they want it. There's no way getting around it. You gotta pay for it first. I don't want it. And I would never pay $20 for no grapes and cantaloupe and Deborah. I would go to the store and I would buy that. Not at a buffet, because it's too much temptation. It's too much. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I can do that. You know, a lot of times people get into she's asking me about talking about carbs and portion control. And that's a good point you bring up too. A lot of people are, well, they started off with the new guidelines. And I don't know if you guys seen the My Healthy Plate. And it talks about filling up that big section with mostly protein, and then have carbs and what have you in the little small grains and carbs or whatever in the other sections. Well, we talk about portion control, and it's really easy to do, but for me, there's a portion on everything you need to do, and they kind of use your fists to tell you how much protein you should eat, how much carbs and so forth you need to eat, how much meat you need to eat. For me, I just say eating small portions. Small portions. And we talk about how you can lose weight. There's this new surgery, well, it's not that new, but they perfected it, called gastric bypass. Gastric bypass is nothing special that's happening. All it is they're forcing you to eat small portions. Okay? They're forcing you to eat high protein foods. And when you're eating small portions and you're doing it frequently, that helps you to lose weight. Okay? So when you talk about carbs, our body requires so many carbs during the day. As far as, it depends on the body makeup, how much weight you weigh, and how tall you are, how many carbs you should have. So I just try to tell my patients to stay away from concentrated sweets, soft drinks, candies, cakes, cookies, those kind of things. Because we need carbs. You can't stay away from carbs. So there's such a thing as healthy carbs and not healthy carbs. So like I said, stay away from all of the concentrated sweets as much as you can. And when you're talking about trying to lose weight and trying to minimize your portion, a lot of times what happens is people who have a tendency to gain weight and have a hard time losing weight, what happens is they say, well, I don't eat breakfast in the morning, okay? And when I do eat, it may be lunchtime or whatever, and I'll eat something, and then sometimes I don't eat at all. I'll wait till the end of the day. I may have coffee in the morning, and I'll wait till the end of the day, and I'll eat a meal. But what happens is, your metabolism needs to start working from early in the morning, as soon as you get up. Because during the night, we're in a fasting state. And that's why you call it break fast or breakfast. Breakfast is what we call it now. Breakfast is for you to break your fast that you've had during the night. And it's to get your metabolism working early in the morning, right? So if you start off eating a little something, and it doesn't have to be, for us, we think of breakfast as grits and eggs and bacon or sausage and toast and orange juice and all of that stuff, right? You don't have to have all of that. Just try to eat a high protein, small portion diet. It could be egg, it could be a piece of meat, lean meat, or what have you, just to kind of get things started. So after you eat your breakfast, in between your breakfast and your lunch, you might want to eat a high protein, small snack. That could be anywhere from a protein bar, it could be from a piece of fruit, it could be a handful of almonds or some kind of nuts. Then you'll eat your lunch. After you eat your lunch, which is a sensible small portion, because now you've already eaten breakfast, you've already had a snack, then you've eaten a small portion lunch. After you eat lunch, you might want to eat another little snack in between lunch.
I'm having chest pain now. I haven't carried my glucose for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk with the doctors, they'll say, well, yours is strictly stress. I'm like, can you have this strictly stress? Or is this just something that they say?
You talking about your chest pain or your heart disease?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Do I have heart disease? Or, because they'll say, oh, Mark, there's nothing wrong because I'll go for all these tests and they can't find anything. And then they'll say it's just strictly stress.
So have you had a heart attack? Okay, listen, if you've had a heart attack, heart attacks don't happen just from stress. What you're experiencing right now when you're having chest pain is that you're probably having spasms in your heart that's in the vessels that cause you to have chest pain. So when you take your nitroglycerin, it dilates the vessels and it stops the spasms, which stops you from having chest pain. If you've had heart attacks, you can't have a heart attack just from stress. I mean, stress may be a precursor, and when you're stressed, usually your blood pressure is a little bit higher. And if you've had a heart attack, that means that you've had blockage of some sort that leads to your heart. And blockage won't come just from stress. There's got to be some blockage
And
there.
that's what I keep saying, because they'll take me through all these tests and run up all these numbers, but then they say they can't find a blockage, they can't find anything. And you know, that, and when they tell me strictly stress, yes, I am stressed. Most of the time when I have a heart attack, I'm fussing with somebody in my apartment, making them do something, and then, I just start hurting, and then they start rotating to my arm and do your back and whatever. But when I go in, they're like, oh, we can't find anything. And I'll be wondering, are they missing something, or?
Can I answer your question? I'm a psychiatrist, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The issue is cortisol. And cortisol is a hormone, stress hormone, that when it rises, it will narrow the arteries. And you can actually deposit more cholesterol with the rise in your stress hormone. And so that's where the other part of the hypotension comes from. So you can narrow the artery, like the renal artery, heart arteries, like you have the spasm that you talked about. That can come from emotional stress. And so that's another factor that will cause you to have pain. And if you will narrow long enough and your nutrition, or as the doctors describe for you, you can run the risk of having heart attacks, strokes, and also exacerbation of diabetes. So you can get, with cortisol, you get insulin resistance. So the insulin that circulates, or your oral hypoglycemic, will actually not respond. And then you can actually continue to have elevations in your serum sugar, blood sugars, and that lead to worsening diabetes, even though you're taking cooperative medications.
I don't want to get that technical, but that's true. But just what she said, the cortisol and the deposits of cholesterol, that's all true. So that's just another component to it. That's all true. But typically it does lead to some type of blockage, spasm. Does that make sense? One more question.
If you are newly diagnosed with high cholesterol and you've been prescribed cholesterol medication, how effective is the medicine is lowering your number, and can you discontinue if it lowers?
Okay, if your cholesterol gets lowered because of the, it's called a statin that you're taking. If your cholesterol gets lowered with that, if you stop taking it, the cholesterol level will go back up. What that medicine typically does is it helps you from the levels from rising, and so that it's not staying inside of your bloodstream itself. But it also helps the way the cholesterol that you intake, as well as the cholesterol that your body makes at night. So it keeps the number lower, but if you stop taking the medication without doing anything else, your number's probably gonna go back up.
What can you do to keep that cholesterol?
Not eating fatty foods and exercising. That's gonna be one more question and that's it.
Okay. I'm speaking on hypertension, right? And I'm taking the high blood pressure medication, correct? So I can, eventually if I exercise more, I eat better, and sometimes I take my blood pressure medication, my blood pressure is way low. But is there a point where I can
Well, actually, you can have your medicine weaned down, but that's something that you and your doctor have to discuss. Because just stop taking your medicine just because it's actually more dangerous than anything else. Okay? And I'll entertain any other questions. I'll be here in case anybody have any other questions that I may answer. Okay?